Canada into a post-nation state, the most glaring casualty has been a free and independent media representing Canadians. This has created an environment of opportunity for journalists who practice ethical truth journalism. Welcome to your spoiler alert. Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? I hope you guys are having an amazing hump day. It is Wednesday. Welcome to another segment of jam-packed common sense for the wandering, wayward, suffering, sane majority that is you guys, my fellow patriots, and near and abroad. I've got a pile of bits and pieces that are going to make a lot of sense into a larger puzzle that I'm going to use to fill in the blanks on the backs of a lot of the work that you guys have been hearing about in the last couple of days specifically. We know that the difference between conspiracy theory and conspiracy fact is now about 2 weeks. And what you guys are going to be seeing in the next little bit is a whole lot of that coming together. So I'm going to start with a little video. It's only a couple minutes that is going to set up, and I'm going to explain all of the machine parts that are coming together that are making what you're going to see in this video a reality. All right, so enjoy this, and we'll get into some nuts and bolts. We won't be here long, but we will make a big bang.
Hey Canadians, can you imagine all of Saskatchewan and Manitoba being sold to the highest bidder? Or just handed over to another country or some entity? By 2030, 30% of all of Canada will have been given over and controlled by the United Nations. And that is the equivalent of all of Manitoba and Saskatchewan put together. By 2025, 25% of Canada's land and waterways will be protected. In other words, no fishing, no hunting, no farming, and no mining will be allowed on these protected areas. Oh, it won't start that way. It will start with limited use, with many laws and regulations. And eventually those protected areas will have fully restricted use. So hunting and fishing licenses, maybe they're $100, $1,000, could go up to $20,000. Provinces and territories are signing conservation agreements with the federal government. Trudeau said that the federal government will work in partnership with Indigenous people. Well, good grief. Can you imagine if Trudeau had approached Indigenous leaders and had said, "You're not managing your lands properly. We are taking over. We are taking land away from you." When you boil it right down, that's exactly what he did. No one is in an uproar about it. Do you know why? Because Trudeau bribed those Indigenous leaders with almost $1 billion. He threw money at them. He basically said, "Here's $800 million. Shut up and let me steal your land." And they did shut up. And he is stealing the land. He's allowing the federal government to steal the land and the United Nations to steal the land. And all that he had to do was bribe people with money. The government can amend the agreement at any time. So now it might say that the area is a protected conservation area. But Trudeau and his federal government can amend it at any time. He can hand that land over to China or the highest paying country or maybe BlackRock or over to Bill Gates or whomever, and they will be allowed to do whatever they want with the land. There are many loopholes in these agreements. For now, Trudeau is allowing the Indigenous people to provide enforcement on some of these conservation areas. So Indigenous people will be enforcing the no fishing, no hunting rules against their own people. Can you imagine all the conflicts that are going to arise? And again, all this money is being thrown at this 30 by 30 conservation project, and it's just begging for more corruption and abuse. And I'm having a difficult time understanding why it's going to cost taxpayers so much money. I think that the Indigenous people should be outraged and insulted. Many of them live in very horrible living conditions with terrible housing and no clean drinking water. But because of so much corruption, they will continue to live that way. Plus, let's add insult to injury. Trudeau is basically saying to the Indigenous people that they are too stupid to properly take care of their own land, that he has to steal it back from them and control their land. And do you think that the United Nations and people like Trudeau will stop at 30%? Worldwide, that's what they're committed to, controlling 30% of land and waterways. But I think that next, they plan on 50% by 2050. They want us all to starve to death. If they control hunting, fishing, and farming, they will accomplish the goal of starving the population and controlling the population. A weak, hungry, defenseless population that does not have enough food and doesn't have guns and that are sick from all their injections is easily controlled. Why are you letting yourself be controlled?
All right, guys, that was incredibly powerful. I do not know the person that created that video, but the significant part to me is there is nothing in that video that I can really argue with. I do have a ton of information that I'm going to share with you now that corroborates and backs up a lot of what she stated in that video. We've been reporting all week. I did a piece on Sunday about the attack on Premier Smith by the media, the establishment, and where that comes from, an organization called 350.org, which is intricately involved in all of this. Last night, Shadow talked on the Shadow at Night show. He talked about the organization C40, and I'm going to share a lot more along those lines with you here right now. I'm going to be putting this out into a published article later tonight with all of the rest of the links. There's some in the chat description, but the rest will go out and you'll find them on whatsupcanada.org later tonight or on yournews.com, because this is critical information. These dots need to be connected. People need to understand the context of this. We're hearing about Thorhild, Alberta. I did a spoiler alert on that. People are taking notice. And we need to, because what Thorhild is experiencing, as people are seeing in the comments, is happening everywhere. And there's a whole lot more to it. And you guys are going to see a little bit of how this is coming about. So I'm going to start with COVID-19. This was a weapon. I'm going to be tomorrow releasing something along the same lines as this, with all of what I've discovered about some incredibly damning allegations that this whole thing was a Department of Defense operation. It I'm going to bring the receipts on that. It's going to blow your minds. So that's tomorrow's. But today, we need to understand the machine, the money, the organization, the structure. And I'm going to start with this article briefly, that as COVID-19 proliferates, mayors take responsive lead, sometimes in conflicts with their governors. So here is an empowerment of the municipal leaders to go against the government to do what they are feeling compelled to do. Where does that come from? Well, this is where it's going to get interesting. We're WUF, World Urban Forum. They held a conference in June of last year. And of course, this is where you will start to find some of the background on the urban planning structure that we are starting to see now. A lot of people have been talking about the 15-minute cities. Oh, you're going to love this video and all of the links. I'm giving you guys a mountain of places that are absolutely connected, but it's going to take all of us to do the work to stop these guys, right? This is literally the ideology, comes from Davos, and the legislation comes from Brussels, and the implementation comes at the grassroots municipal level. You guys have heard us saying this often, so many times, but that's been such a broad descriptive. We need to understand more specifically who, how, where, and when. When what we're seeing right now came into play starting in June of last year through the World Urban Forum. Now, when they come out with a new initiative or the next level of their agenda, how does that affect us all across the board? Almost immediately through the synchronicity of governance, which is what they have used to through their infiltration as close the penetration of the cabinets that Klaus speaks so proudly of. How does that happen? Through money, funding, and organizations like the Global Parliament of Mayors. And there's this is the who's who of the top 1% of the influencers that are making the world go round, and they have this little society of networks for mayors. And okay, well, let's drop down a couple of thousand feet and see, what does that look like? Where does that fit into this picture? And wouldn't you know it, y'all recognize those colors and branding and logos, right? Now we are into the sustainable development goals. You guys hear Mark rail about this stuff all the time. Mark Friesen, the Grizzly Patriot, and others. Everybody keeps talking about the sustainable development goals. What does that mean? What is that? How does that impact just us, we the little people? This is your plug-in, guys, and I'm going to show you a whole bunch more that's going to blow your mind. So the Forum of Mayors is another cesspool of snake pits and vipers, initiated and managed and collaborated through training on urban development, housing, and land management. So do not think for a second that you and what your community is facing is unique. It is all coming from the same cesspit of traitorous, treasonous vipers. So I showed you a few minutes ago the World Urban Forum. They're meeting in June of 2022. They are having another one in 2026. This is where they expect to be. And it's all of the countries that are buying into this is where we're seeing just mountains of this same radical ideology that has infested every other place. So this particular website is more about what they're planning for that big convention. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but this is what the playbook is coming up to 2026. So everything they're doing now is to put them in place for what they want to initiate and kick off in 2026. So that should give people an indicator to dig into how what's the next stage? Why are they doing this? They'll be explaining and taking the next steps towards that on there. So then the housing, this comes right through one of the links from one of the pages. I'm going in order of these pages and what they represent, who they are, all of that jazz. This is where the concept of the 15-minute cities, these are the committees that look after the rules of procedure, in essence. Right. So there's all kinds of resources and links in these platforms. You guys are going to get your hands on that. So once they've developed these strategies and plans and land management, and so this was put together in 1947, right? And there's they've been at this for a really long time. So none of this is conspiracy theory. Now, anybody wants to call you a conspiracy theorist, you can put together the evidence. So how do they make that happen? Is through mayoral. uh, I hate using words, these cliche words like secret societies and cults, but these are organizations of people that have agreed to do horrible things, unlawful things that, by our sentiments, against us, and this is just one more tentacle of the how they make these magical changes in our society happen, is through things like the Geneva Declaration of Mayors. And in the when I put the written piece out a little bit later on, I've even got a link where you can go and download and read in depth and study what these guys are pledging allegiance to. This is a declaration to strengthen the resilience of our cities, to take ambitious climate action to make our cities greener, accelerate the transition to sustainable energy, ensure urban transport is sustainable, ensure housing is affordable, healthy, and adequate, make cities more equitable and inclusive. I guarantee you, when you get to the end of the 16 pages, it will not in your mind have delivered on any of the things that they talk about in this opening page. So, who are these strong mayors? This is where it's going to make your skin crawl when you start to see how deep and corrupt this is. So, going back to September of last year, this was a topic of discussion amongst the intellectual elite, defining this principle of mayors that are going against, in the time of their sense of superiority, how they can restructure themselves. So this goes right into depth about the whole ideology of strong mayors, and how they can work together regardless of what the people or the governments want to think, right? And here's a paper on it. So you guys are going to have documentation again of what their philosophy towards political leadership from their perspective is versus what uh, what we think it is. Let's just say that. And all of this stuff, all of it is 100% crafted by the same climate cult people, right? So what are they doing? They're all about intervention. So here's one that is one of those things that's going to make your skin crawl, and give you a further example of how integrated this stuff is. And you guys have probably never heard of any of these things. Here's the Mayor's Innovation Project, and it's primarily American based, but it is also represented in Canada as well, in our largest urban centers. And these cities literally pay, if they have based on population size, what their membership fee is. So your cities, if you go to the your city accounting budgets and you look at line items, you're going to find one of these expenses to one of these global mayors innovation projects. I'm not going to spend much time digging into the financial backing or where they come from. I just know that they are absolutely all objective oriented and connected, and stem from the same organizations, people, and benefactors that are implementing all of these globalist policies, all of these rules and laws that they're writing and enforcing upon us, because they're committed to the sustainable development agendas, right? So it's all that foreign policy that they are writing laws that have real world impacts on us. And how big is that? Well, I went and after looking at what these innovation projects were and who they are, I decided to look and to see how many of them we have in Canada. Well, this is where, to me, it kind of punched me in the gut, like the 32 pages of Pfizer documents, because you see that I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling. But guess what? There's 9 more pages, guys. There's 9 more pages of cities that have signed on to this covenant. Covenant. Tell me this shit isn't a cult? They've got covenants. Literally covenants. And another one. Didn't really have time to do into this one, but it's the same thing. The pattern is exactly the same. The model of achieving this is exactly the same. They do it the same way they've done with the land grabs. They do it in a way that they can control the response. I saw the same pattern with Jason Kenney and his Fair Deal panel. They were structured in a way and literally timed around the NDP's calendar so that the NDP staffers would fill the auditoriums in response to the conservative panel and give all of this feedback so that Jason Kenney could write policy based on what the Albertans wanted. But he wasn't hearing from Albertans. He was hearing from controlled opposition. That is controlled opposition. And that's exactly what these guys do it in controlled methodologies. And they use technology and grassroots organizations and lying and brainwashing through organizations like this one, like C40.org. The instant you put Bloomberg together with cities, you know what this is all about. Shadow dug into depth in this last night. Dig into Shadow's show if you haven't seen that. I'll add all of these links. And then it kind of ties back into the other one again, right here. The same command center as the people that are going after Daniel Smith and the energy industry. They've cost us $12 trillion with a T, trillion dollars in energy resources that have been stolen from us through fraudulent climate scams. That's terrorism. And these guys, this 350.org guys, when you follow the crumb trail, they live in the same office space as Canadian Natural Resources. It's not a very big building. You tell me that in that environment that they don't know each other. Nobody in a power of a position of power and influence and responsibility knows that they're not. I mean, you can tell me they don't know they're living with their arch enemy, with the people that are destroying our entire energy industry through fraud. These guys are pillaging money to save the climate from the community under false pretenses, pseudo fake science, and it's organizations like this one and this one that are in collusion with these ones. And the sad part of it is, it's pretty tough for any of the current politicians to admit that they're contractually obligated to exactly all of this because they're in the squeeze. So here's the thing. Pierre Poilievre can't save you. Nobody can save you at the political federal level unless they have these guys, the mayors, driving them to do so. The mayors have to break the contracts that they've got with the United Nations before the politicians are going to drop the contracts that they have with the United Nations. So this is why when Danielle Smith tries to protect the oil and gas jobs in Alberta, um, the XL pipelines, the bread and butter, the lies that are destroying it. It's not just the uh, local thugs coming out that are responsible for that. That is the same contracts that all of the federal elected parties, the establishment parties, are agreed on to through the UNSDA and the Migration Compact, um, uh, which is such a misnomer because it has very little to do with migration in the Migration Compact. It's more about the infrastructure of all of these things. And this is where these omnibus bills that they pass through that have everything under the in the kitchen sink in these huge bills that have nothing to do with what they're called. Those huge bills are how they slide in this kind of legislation that's orchestrated through the land grabs and the communities and the 9 pages of corrupted covenant members that are enforcing this or enabling or facilitating these 15-minute cities so that the land use bylaws that they are going to be using UNDRIP and the environment to remove us from any access to anything outside of the cities and then take away our vehicles. And that's where they are hurting us through the entire political establishment. So this is what we need to understand, folks. This isn't just a Trudeau problem. This was actually initially signed in by Mulroney and then Harper, and now we have Trudeau who's ticking all the boxes, and Pierre Poilievre is stuck to the same thing whether he wants to admit it or not. He's choosing to pretend he doesn't know that any of this exists. Your local mayor is going to pretend that he doesn't know that any of this exists, but here it all is. But it's going to take a whole lot more of us to make sure that this gets far enough that people can actually have an opportunity to dig into understanding this and fighting back. So this is why when I say that this is nobody's coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. And that means at a municipal grassroots interventions. We have to start in our municipalities, in our communities. You hear Shadow saying it. You hear all of us talking heads that are fighting back saying this. Now I'm giving you the Lego blocks and pieces so that you can go forth in confidence and understand why it is so powerful that you take back your communities from these globalist pirates. All right, guys.
Hey,
Oh, my bad. Lost my buttons there. All right, guys. That is drink from the fire hose. I've got so much on my plate, but that should really arm you guys. Please help this message get out so that others can add their research to it. I wish I had a team to work this, but we got to do it together, and we're winning, but it's just going to take a whole lot of hard work, guys. But this is where people say, well, what can I do? What can I do? Thorhild only has about 3,000 people in that county. Um, so, but they're fighting back. And now the people know, and people are learning from that, and people are seeing that because we heard about it and we told others, and people are looking at it and going, holy crap, this is happening to my community too. The exact same thing. Everywhere, everywhere. They're coming for us through these immoral, unethical, treasonous policies that they are writing the rules on as they go. And this is where it's intervention time. It's time for us as contributing members of our communities and our societies. This is where it becomes our duty and responsibility to make this be known what is happening through the land use bylaws in your communities. Get familiar. I guarantee you it all points back to this, and help this message get out there. And yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Keep us going, guys. This is a community grassroots funded platform. We were working hard. I did see a question up there earlier. We had some issues with our email system over at LGM. We're developing, working, building on that. We're working on having chat added in there as soon as we can. So stay strong, Canadians. There's a lot of info in there. I look forward to your commentary and feedback and more information coming to light and making sense. And let's put something together on how we can organize our resistance on a more focused level to beat them, to put out these fires right where they're at, because we still have the opportunity to intervene on a lot of these things, but we've got to catch them at what they're doing. Most of us don't even realize who, what, why, when, or how these things are coming to be. Start looking at your mayors right there. Start there. All right, guys. So keep on keeping on. Stay strong. Keep fighting. Down below, you can see where you can send me a coffee if that was worth a tip to you. The next one is going to be scary, scary stuff, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's the right thing you need to know. We need to change the wording on some of our arguments and how we're combating the war that's waging against us through the biological warfare. We need to start to adopt the correct language so that we can move forward to achieving some of the correct results. So that's in a nutshell. And this one, short, sweet, to the point. Lots of bits and pieces in there, guys. Help me get this out. They are censoring me like never before in my lifetime, trying new things, doing everything I can, but it still depends on you, and we need your help. Love you all. Stay Canadian, and we'll see you next time around. Don't forget to tune into Shadow Davis tonight at 8 o'clock. He's a brother in arms and all of this. So between him and I, we are doing everything that we can. Help us keep going, keep the message and the truth flowing, and get over on Wimkin and whatnot too, guys. Good stuff happening over on LGM. Be patient with us. That's a brand new platform. We're working the bugs out of it. Get plugged in there, get subscribed on there. We've got new channels coming on as well over the next week. So lots going on. See you next time.